So I'm really excited to be here with Geeneus, the founder of Rinse. Thank you so much for being here and taking the time. I know you're a very, very busy man, so really appreciate it. I think it'd be great, in your own words, to kind of provide a bit of an introduction in terms of Rinse FM. Obviously, it's incredibly iconic in the UK and also around the world, but would love to hear, in your words, kind of how to summarize Rinse.
It's hard to summarize 30 years. Trying to consider how to introduce something that has evolved so many times is a radio station, first and foremost, and that has turned into a group of radio stations that we kind of see ourselves as a platform now that incorporates 4 record labels, a management company, events departments, and so on. So a platform for young and up-and-coming artists to have a place to start their career and continue.
Bit of a big question, but why and maybe how also did you get started in radio, and what was the kind of initial spark?
When I was probably 12 or 13, one of my cousins showed me pirate radio when I was around the house, and they explained it to me in a way where they was listening to this crazy music, and I was like, what is this? It's like some crazy mad beats and that, and I was like, up until then I'd only heard pop music. So I remember listening to it and being curious and asking questions, and they explained to me that it's a pirate radio station and that the authorities are trying to catch them and they have to keep moving. And it intrigued me. I was like, oh, that sounds quite like interesting. In my mind, where they explained it to me, I think, oh, radio stations that are pirate have to keep moving. So I was moving up and down the dial, trying to find them, thinking they're moving. I learned later that actually they meant where they're based is moving, not actually up and down the dial. But yeah, it was a kind of first point where I was like intrigued by what radio is and pirate radio. I guess, yeah, I was probably 12, 13, and then from that day there, I just become obsessed until, I mean, that was more than 30 years ago.
It'd be really cool if you're comfortable kind of walking us through the early days of Rinse FM and broadcasting and what that kind of experience was like. I know you were broadcasting from kitchens, from rooftops.
To go backwards a little bit, before Rinse, I was on a radio station called Pressure FM, and I was a DJ on an estate in Tower Hamlets, and there was a guy called, now known as Slimsy, in Bow, and he was on a station called Pressure, and one of my friends basically introduced me and took me to Pressure FM and got me a show on there. So that's the kind of how I met Slim and that. And that was my kind of first introduction to pirate radio, being on it. Jumping forward a little bit down the line, we got kicked off of Pressure FM and we had no station or nowhere to go. And the only solution we had was to start our own. One of the reasons why we got kicked off was because we was seen as problematic and young compared to everyone else, although thinking about it now, there's probably only a couple of years difference in the age gaps. But anyway, we set out to start our own station with a few of us as a group, and we managed to find someone who could get us a transmitter. We ventured out onto everyone else's tower blocks to have a look to see how you do it. So we went up on Pressure FM's roof and basically done some research. And one of my friends, his older brother, had just been given his first council flat in Bow. And I convinced him to let us take the flat to turn the radio station on and put it in his kitchen. So we got our transmitter, we got his flat, which had nothing in it apart from a kitchen, no furniture, nothing. And we set up in the kitchen, we put the transmitter in the room with us, we put the aerial out the window, and we switched on Rinse on Carnival weekend 30 years ago. From there, every day was like a progression up until now. But day one was basically, we switch on the station, we phone our friends in Hackney and we say, can you hear it? They're like, yeah, it's amazing. And I phone my friend on the other side of the building that's down there. Can you hear it? He's like, no, I can't hear nothing. So
it was only a really limited kind of radius.
Because we wasn't on top of the tower block, we was pointing the aerial. So it basically can't go through the tower blocks.
Right.
So anyway, that was the start of...
But then you learn, obviously, and you start...
Yeah, we learned pretty quickly that even having the transmitter in the room with us was a mistake because that's what they track. So we've got the transmitter, which is also you're not meant to stand there because of the frequencies and that to come off of it. So we had the transmitter underneath the mixer, so everyone's DJing with all of this heat coming into them, and we didn't know. So.
Radiation, oops.
Yeah, we'll probably get sued for that at some stage.
So running a pirate radio station definitely must have had its challenges that probably really influenced the ethos of Rinse and the past 30 years. And it'd be great to maybe hear a little bit more about how those early days have really kind of influenced where you've taken the company going forward.
I mean, there's a couple of things. I think the main thing is, and I have to check myself every now and again of the reason why we do things. And I think what we've done with Rinse in the beginning was we took into consideration that as young people, we was passionate about something, which was music. We wanted to be involved and we wanted to share our version of it. It was impossible to get on a commercial radio station, and the format was not what we was into. Looking at stations like Kool FM and Rush FM and them ones, growing up, they was probably the inspiration for us as to what we'd like to do with our life. In school, we would be listening to tapes of the pirate stations before us, and in terms of role models, there probably wasn't anything else in our lives living on the States that was doing something for a community or something that was so relatable to, because listening to the voices, hearing the music felt like local and didn't feel so far in the distance. Do you know what I mean? That was a really important thing for us as we started. When we got on Pressure, we learned a fair bit, but we realised that it was designed in a particular way. Looking at Kool FM and some of the older stations, we realised that once you was on there, the doors was closed. That was that. So our kind of thought process was like, we're going to back the young and we're going to back new, and we're always going to stay like that, and we're never going to just bring someone on, make our own thing and kind of be gatekeepers. We wanted to be that actually we will constantly look for talent, we'll constantly try and help the next generation, and we'll constantly evolve with everything to keep going. And as we go along, there are points where I'm like, are we still doing the right thing? And I probably had it like 4 or 5 years ago, and I sat down and I'd been traveling and been off for a while. So I come back and thought, right, are we doing the right thing? And I look and I'm like, all right, we've got all of these DJs, they're really big. I'm like, but it just doesn't feel right. So we do this thing, which sometimes is seen as a negative, but we call it a destroy and rebuild, where basically I kind of scrap everything and we start again. So out goes all of the big artists, and I replace them all with the young, brand new ones. Most people think is crazy when I do it.
Takes a lot of courage to do that, for sure.
Yeah. But I think our job is not to have the biggest. It's meant to have the new, and it's meant to be helpful. And when you get to a certain status, I'm like, I can't help. You're already big. So. Yeah,
and supporting the community, like you said, yeah.
Yeah, and as a person, I'm always interested in what's new. Just in general, I'm like new technology, the newest everything. I never get stuck on this is how it's meant to be. In fact, I would gladly, even in the office now, we'll be running a process, it'll be running nicely, and I will change it just because I'm like, we should switch it up and try it a different way. And everyone would be like, but it's not broken. I'll be like, so what? Let's just change it. So naturally, as a person, I'm like, I will do that.
Amazing. I mean, Rinse is obviously known for being an incredible tastemaker, especially for the genres of grime, garage and dubstep, obviously. So, I mean, I think your destroy and rebuild mentality is probably also meant that you're able to kind of be a leader in a lot of these kind of spaces and really encourage new sounds. Can you talk a little bit to that if you're...
It's probably the same thing, really. I'm like, the evolution of UK music, in my opinion, is driven by a lot of mistakes. And what I find is in every scene, a new generation comes into it and they try to create it. And by them trying to create it with their own view, they do it slightly wrong and create something else. So if you go from garage to grime, and I was part of that, we wasn't trying to make grime. Actually, we was completely against it. We didn't want nothing to be called grime. We wasn't trying to make grime. We was adamant we was making garage. But we was making it incorrectly. We wasn't part of the scene. We was outside of it, looking in. So we done that, and we made grime, and off the back of the garage thing also come the dubstep journey, which was also part of the evolution of garage. So for me, what I feel like Rinse has recognised is that doing things slightly wrong is important, and if something is slightly different and you don't understand it, it's probably something that you should help and support and back, and not try and hold down and push away. So we encourage the incorrect versions of stuff, and we encourage to experiment, and we have the thing where it's, yeah, we've been involved in jungle, garage, funky, grime. I'm like, in all honesty, to me, it's all just one journey. It's all like one music just keeps evolving. You can relate all of them back to the beginning.
Do you think it's still very UK centric? Do you feel like that sound has kind of gone a lot more global, or?
We're in a different time now. You don't have genres as easy as you did back then, and you don't have time to nurture. So when we done dubstep, it's probably a 7-year journey before it got to being such a commercial proposition. By the time we come with something like Katie on a Mission, everyone's like, dubstep's great, and we'd be like, we're about 7 years in, mate. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think you get that kind of time anymore. You don't. There's no nurturing of music on council estates that develop with just a small group of friends. It's a different time. I don't think it's wrong. I think I quite like it. It's different again now. So I don't think we can create a scene as such as what we did back then across all of them. But now I think that the experimentation is a lot easier and more people are up for it. So there's a constant flow of new sound constantly, and they all can work together now. And I listen to some artists, I'm like, that kind of sounds like jungle, but kind of sounds like garage. But then is that dubstep? And I'm not really sure, but I'm like, it's just good tunes. So I feel like we've built a lot of different elements throughout the years of the UK underground scene. The narrow's evolved into being like, well, you've got all of these to look at and use parts from to create something new, and it doesn't need an individual name as such anymore.
I wonder what they'll call this era then, if there is going to be a name for it, or if it's just...
We struggle with it every day. I'm like, we currently be like, is it electronic? Is it dance music? Is it rave? Is it... And I would still say underground, but then I'm like, but actually what we have now is something that starts developing at a really small incubator level, gets snapped up quite quickly by the mainstream. So there is no time for it to actually remain in the underground.
Rinse has broken some incredible artists. Any kind of big memorable moments or milestones that kind of stand out for you that you'd love to share? Maybe some that we know, maybe some that we haven't heard of as much, or?
Probably like Neo Archive is one of the ones where I was, it was interesting to see someone quite young have such a big desire to be involved in jungle, which was a music that was the start of Rinse. From the jungle scene's point of view, it was great to get a bit of recognition, because without what they'd done back then, I don't believe any of us would have what we have now anyway. There's a bunch of them, Eliza, Interplanetary, Ruthless right now. I'm very interested in the way she's going to progress. But then you go back all the way, I'm like, we'd have had the Dizzies in that era, and then you have the Screams and the Bengers in that era. And it's kind of like, I say, like every 2 or 3 years, there's a cycle of artists and talent that have success, that are kind of championing the direction.
And you guys are the first to really kind of support them, because you guys aren't afraid to take a bit of a risk.
A lot of things were based on stats, numbers, trying to gauge how well something's doing before people will back it. Personally, don't really like that approach. I think you should just stop looking at that stuff, use your ears and meet the person, and if you believe it, back it. And I think it's something that we've always tried to do as a platform, is that I don't care whether they just come from nothing and they've got 1 follower and no one's ever heard of them. I'm like, if you meet the person and you believe them, which I think is an important point, and the music or the DJing or the singing or whatever it is good, I just have the feeling of like, naturally it's good, let's do it. And sometimes we do it and artists don't succeed, but I would never look back and think I made a bad choice, because I'm like, well, I still like what they done. Whether someone is the smallest or the biggest isn't the main point. It's the thing around, do you support stuff that you like, and do you believe in it? And do you need to be told by a load of other bits of information that it's good? Generally, I can't do that.
So why do you think radio is still so important today? And kind of why do you keep investing in radio as a format?
For me, radio is important because it's part of our journey, and I feel like I spent my life doing it, so I have no desire to stop. I think it's changed a lot, and it can never be what it was. But I still think it gives a platform for artists to practice, in a sense, to give them a chance to grow confidence, because some talent now would go straight from, I just made a record that has done really well, and now I've got to play in front of thousands of people, and I'm like, I'm not sure you're ready for that. Where we would give the opportunity to be like, go on the radio as much as you want and use it as a place to experiment and practice. So, and that's how we learned originally. So for me, radio gives artists that opportunity.
I'd love to talk about Rinse Recordings as well. Why start a record label? Why kind of branch out into that?
Originally, we didn't start the label Rinse. We started a label called Dump Valve, random grime label. And we had Rinse, and I had just started making tunes, and we had a record deal with Sony, and we went through this whole process of being signed to a major. It was the most amazing thing until we got dropped, and then it was like, oh, actually, it wasn't very good. Everyone was gone, and my view was that we have to do this ourselves, the same as the radio. So I built a shed in my garden, which was a studio, and started getting like people like Target and Wonder and all of them in to make tracks and that. And we started a label called Dump Valve based on Slimzy had a car with a dump valve, which is just something that makes it go fast. And then while we was having success with that label, because it was doing really well, we was like, actually, you know what, we should start a label for Rinse. And I just had a couple of tracks that I had made just sitting in the computer. And I was like, let's just do a release and call it Rinse. So we pressed a blue 10-inch vinyl as the first Rinse recording. And it kind of just started from there. It wasn't a real big plan. We didn't set out to be like, right, now we're gonna launch a label. I guess the thing with Rinse is that we do have a record label, we do have events, we do have a management arm, brand partnerships, merch. None of them started with like a big plan. They was all like one day we can be like, we should just do this. And then we do it, and then all of a sudden it's another
Destroy
part.
and rebuild.
Yeah, another part of the business that someone's got to manage.
And so how does the recording side kind of feed into the radio side, or do you feel like it kind of complements the discovery kind of pipe that Rinse FM has, or how do you kind of blend the two worlds, or are they quite separate?
The thing what I have now is I look at a lot of different platforms and businesses, and I'm always interested in like, all right, how does anyone survive in the current world, and especially as an independent company. I don't think that one thing alone can work. I don't believe, in my opinion, that if you're just a magazine, you're going to make it. If you're just a radio station, you probably ain't going to make it. So it's how do you create an ecosystem within your own thing. And for us, having the radio station has always been a great source of A&R for us. We get to see what's first. We get to keep in touch with what is currently going on. We stay very connected to the talent, and it gives us, as a label, the opportunity to back things first, enter the conversation with artists and try and help before we get the full-scale attack from major label land, trying to sign everything. And we also get to help direct it and grow it. So I think the label definitely benefits from the station, and the same the other way around. I guess the way Rinse works now is that every department has to help each other. There is no, there's a record label and there's a radio station and there's events. It's all like they have to work together. So yeah, there's one curation team. There's not loads of different departments coming up with the ideas of what talent. It's like there's mechanical stuff that has to happen in each department, but generally the team collectively will be like, if we like something for the radio, then we like something for the label, and we like it for the event, and we like it for everything.
Talent like KDB, how do you kind of spot that?
There's something about when you meet someone and when you hear what they've created, that you become a fan and you can't help it. It wasn't a strategic move, didn't plan for it. And we had no clue, that Katie was going to become big. I just had a thing around, can we make a project and can we release some songs? That's simple. And we got along and we proceeded to do that. And then we released On a Mission, and it was like number 5 in the chart within a week. And we was like, what's going on?
I'd love to talk about Rinse France as well. How did that come about? What's the plan? That's so exciting.
France was another freestyle. I just woke up one day, I was like, I really want to start another radio station somewhere else. And I picked France basically because it was right there. And then someone introduced me to someone, Manaray, who wanted to start a radio station. I was like, oh, this guy wants to start a station. So basically I met him, we got along really well. And within space of weeks probably, we set out to start Rinse France. Actually traveling there, I realized that there is no platforms with a community like radio. There is nowhere for talent to be nurtured, and there is no actual scenes of artists that are working as a community to build something of their own. So I was quite motivated to go there and try and create that space, and Manaray and Laurent really wanted to do that as well, and they had grown up listening to Rinse, so they already had the same ethos and they believed it, so it's quite refreshing to go somewhere else and be like, oh, users have noticed as well. So
and
yeah.
Sonically, differences that you found or similar? Do you play a lot of the UK stuff in France and vice versa?
No, we don't. We encourage it to be be what they believe as well.
Yeah.
So most of the station is French speaking. A lot of it is local talent now. If someone's in France, then they should be on Rinse France. We have that kind of separation now. It's more complicated now with the other 2 stations we recently acquired. Rinse France is a version of Rinse, but local to their territory. It's become more like now, Rinse, just the word Rinse is more like the global, and then the other stations are more specialised.
Right, right. And do you want to talk to the other 2 stations as well that you've acquired? And
we acquired Kool FM last year. I was like, Kool FM's done so much for us all and such part of the culture. It should be protected, and I know Eastman, who was running it for his whole life, he's like the generation above me. He had got to a place where he was like, look, I'm quite tired. I can't do this forever. I care about Kool, and I equally cared about Kool. So we come to an agreement, and we kept a fair bit of the original artists from back in '94, and we added a bunch of the new ones and combined up the whole jungle drum and bass scene to have a current version of Kool. Probably all of the things I've done in the past year was the most important to me.
wow.
Because I feel like now there's Kool on the front line, at the front, that is remembered from there, and there's a lot of people now that I'm like, have you heard of this new station Kool? And it's like, it's great to see that it's serving all of the generations.
Yeah. And bad music as well. So in terms of that label, do you want to kind of explain a little bit about bad music?
What it is, we have 4 labels under our umbrella, and they kind of all serve slightly different purposes. Kool being the drum and bass label now, and Bad was the more leaning in the singer-songwriter area, so Sinead, Sasha, a kid called James Smith. Funny because I have it with the stations. Everyone's like, oh, I want to be on Kool, or I want to be signed to Bad, and I'm like, it's all just Rinse really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's not about the label, it's about the artist that we believe. It gets the same team and the same drive as any of our stuff, but it's more like artists completely in front.
The partnership with b.electronic, it'd be great to kind of talk about that and why you chose to kind of partner with b.electronic and how that relationship's been and how it kind of aligns with Rinse's missions as well, and visions and ethos.
I've worked with a lot of different distributors and labels, and I've worked with most of the industry across 30 years, and the reason why I decided to go with Believe was because of the independent side of the company, and it not being just connected to the kind of standard major label approach, and us being such an independent company, we felt like it was a good fit. And I met Panos and Ben and the guys, and it's probably people I believe in first other than companies. And I think companies that recognise that the person is important are the companies that generally I will gravitate towards. There was something about Believe that was believable, and I was like, and generally I just make decisions on, is the conversation easy? Can we just have a chat? Can we work it out? Do I need to get lawyers, or can we just work it out? If it's like that, then I'm like, generally I'll just keep going in that direction. And it was pretty much like that with Believe. I had a conversation directly with a human being all the way up until it was like, there's the contract. The lawyers looked at it quickly and said, like, let's sign it. So it just felt like the right fit to be with a distributor that had a similar approach and something in common. So it was quite an important part.
And so in terms of kind of broader goals going forward as well, is there kind of key things in the next year, 3 years, 30 years that you kind of are looking towards?
The plan for us is to constantly evolve and keep going. I have ambition. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a hindrance, because I always want to try and push us further. It's difficult because we have quite a small team and it's just us. We don't have anyone else supporting as such. So we take on a fair amount. I'd like to move into other areas of creativity and start new things, but I have to take into consideration what we can handle as a company. I have this thing where I have a lot of conversation with people and I have to explain to them that we're not Google. Everyone wakes up every day and believes that we'll be there. It's like, yeah, Rinse is always going to be there. I'm like, mate, it's not that easy. Do you know what I mean? It's quite a complicated company to run, and we have 5 or 6 departments all running. I have to be mindful when I'm trying to add the new stuff, but there's 3 or 4 things that I'm trying to convince the team to let me action. You would think it would be up to me, but it's not.
The lessons you've learned over the past 30 years. Any lessons that have really kind of stuck with you or that have really shaped your approach to leading the team, leading Rinse?
I think my biggest lessons are try and do everything with pure intention. Just do what you believe in and try and make sure that every day you go through it, you're happy doing it, because I don't think that there's an end goal. People say to me all the time, when will I retire? And I'm always like, in 5 years, and they'll be like, yeah, you've been saying that for the past 20. But whilst we enjoy what we do, I don't think anyone will have a desire to retire. So my whole thing is just wake up and do what you like. And if you don't like it, bail out quickly.
I mean, that has been amazing. You've shared so much wisdom, and thank you so much for taking the time. Follow the Rinse socials.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll all be listed there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, G. Really appreciate it.